Bing bong. I am live with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. And I'd like to thank everybody streaming me sats or sending me boosts on any podcasting 2.0 app. I really do appreciate it. This past week I had a bunch of people streaming me sats, but no boosts. So if you want me to read out something next time you listen to this show, you got a comment or something like that, some feedback, a boost would be greatly appreciated. And then I'd also like to thank my sponsors. So, brand new sponsor, breaking news, Bitcoin Miami 2023. It is the biggest Bitcoin conference in the country. And now I can help you get there for a little bit cheaper. You could save 10% on your ticket to Bitcoin Miami by using promo code Green Candle. So use that extra 10% that you would have used for a ticket and use that to stack more sats, man. And to stack more sats, put it in cold storage and store that seed phrase with CODLCO. So that's CODL, CODL.co. Best punch plates in the game. Use promo code Green Candle. That's all lowercase. The Bitcoin Miami, all uppercase, all caps. Use that to buy your ticket and then save that 10%. Put your corn in cold storage and use a punch plate from CODL.co to stack those sats. Now, I've got a very special guest. I got two-time hackathon champion, Alex Lewin here. What's up, champ? How you doing?
It's going well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to have you here, and I was glad to connect with you in Austin. So for those who don't really know much about you, why don't you give us the rundown? Who are you, and how did you kind of get started in Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure thing. My name's Alex. I'm a software engineer. I work on Bitcoin Lightning mainly. I got started in Bitcoin 2-ish years ago at a company called NCR. And as part of my job, I was in like a software innovation lab. And with that, I got exposed to a lot of different technologies, including Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning. So through that job, kind of got addicted to Bitcoin and addicted to Lightning. And then about a year ago, I started working at a place called Blockspaces. And Blockspaces, at that job, I've been building solutions for businesses to send, receive, and account for Bitcoin. But it's been great from Atlanta,
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like Atlanta is a big developer kind of scene. Is that, I guess, kind of did that scene kind of influence you to get into, the dev space or anything like that? Or were you kind of, I guess, more program minded prior to finding Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I was in like software engineering circles like prior to that, but it definitely helped me get addicted to Bitcoin. My first exposure was my boss at my last job told me to go to this meetup called Atlanta Bit Devs, and I started going, and they were in the middle of a reading group for a book called Mastering the Lightning Network, and that was my first exposure to Bitcoin, was just going through this basically textbook about the Lightning Network, and then went to TabConf that first year, the Atlanta Bitcoin Conference, and that blew my mind, and met a bunch of cool Bitcoin developers. And yeah, I guess the rest is history. Now I help organize sometimes. Every once in a while I speak at BitDevs. I still go every week. Atlanta scene is definitely growing. It's got a strong, we have a bunch of meetups. There's 4 meetups a month at least. And then a big conference once a year.
Yeah, so we'll dive into the conference a little bit too, because I think it is pretty interesting the format that the Tab conference is. So, I mean, it's not obviously a sales pitch or anything like that for that, but how is the Tab Conf maybe a little bit different than some of these other Bitcoin related conferences? And what kind of drew you to that?
Sure. TabConf is, I call it the premier technical Bitcoin conference in the world. It gets turnout like any other, or unlike any other conference in the developer community. But with that being said, it's not a conference for everybody in my mind. It's honestly probably a terrible first exposure to Bitcoin unless you're already technically minded, because they don't cater to the lowest common denominator. But however, if you are technical and you're already interested in Bitcoin, it's like a candy land. It's the every talk is technical more or less, and the people and the content is it's unlike anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like that, right? It's like more targeted towards developers. I know that there's a lot of workshops and other things like that too. So it seems almost like a kind of a collaborative effort when it comes to that. But let's take it back to the beginning. All right. So, I think a lot of people in the Bitcoin space maybe know or have heard of the Lightning Network, but they never really sat in front of like a developer and kind of like had them break it down. So, other than it being like a layer two, oh well, let's back it up. So explain like the differences between a layer one, layer two, and yeah, what the Lightning Network basically is. And my dog's bug. I forgot I left my dog outside, so I'm gonna be listening, but I gotta go let him in real quick.
All good. Yeah, and I'll start from the top, so you got some time. So first, Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is money. It's money, and the goal is to use it not just to store money like in a bank account, but also with payments and moving money around. However, Bitcoin has some fundamental hurdles to get over in order to become a payment rail of the future. And the two biggest things are speed of settlement. It takes 10-ish minutes to send a transaction at minimum, and the cost of setting a single transaction is too high. It can sometimes cost like a few bucks to send just a simple payment, and that's too much for like the card networks, or when compared to the card networks. So what do? We got this awesome money, the best money in the world, but we want to move it around really fast, and that's where Lightning comes in. So Lightning is a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin that allows you to move the same Bitcoin around, but at the speed of Lightning. So we take Bitcoin, which takes like 10-ish minutes to settle on chain, and we can settle Lightning payments in under a second. But the cool part is that we're not compromising any of the security or like decentralization concerns with Bitcoin. So we get to glean all of the benefits and all the innovation behind Bitcoin, but we now can move it around at the speed of the internet.
So then, what are some of the compromises that Lightning makes in order to increase those speeds?
Yeah, compromises the Lightning makes.
I know
So it's not as
asking
simple. No, it's a good question. It's like so Lightning. It's a really bulletproof, rock solid protocol. There isn't. I mean, it's got its growing pains and it's trying to figure out how to solve all of its problems. But one of the big things is that getting Bitcoin on chain is very, very simple. You just generate an address and then you have somebody send you Bitcoin. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. But in order to transact on the Lightning Network, actually, first with on-chain Bitcoin, you're sending money between addresses effectively. Like my address sends your address Bitcoin. But on Lightning, it doesn't work like that. You have a Lightning node, and the node sends Bitcoin to another Lightning node. So what does that mean? That means that everybody that transacts over Lightning needs to have a node or have access to a Lightning node. So does that make sense? Like the difference? It's like one of them is just like it's an identifier, it's a username. The other one is like a piece of hardware.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I get that makes sense and everything like that. But, all right. So then to go from Lightning back to on chain, then essentially would it just be, I guess, what are the intricacies behind that? And, when they talk about, the Lightning Network and kind of, the overall volume, right now, it seems like the volume keeps increasing and everything like that. So, for those who might not, I guess, understand all that. So what is, I guess, why is there a difference between the Bitcoin transaction volume and the overall like Lightning kind of Lightning Network volume?
Yeah. So Bitcoin transactions and Lightning payments, they behave somewhat differently. Like with Bitcoin transactions, you craft a transaction, like you say, I want to send this amount of money to this person, and then you publish that for the whole network. And then the Bitcoin network takes the transaction, includes it into a block, and then basically processes the transaction. What does that mean? Well, that means that you have to get everybody on board to see your transaction. Like everybody in the network sees when you pay somebody on Bitcoin. But when you're on the Lightning Network, you just have a relationship between two people. Effectively, what the Lightning Network is doing is you're just passing around these like signed checks. Like if Bitcoin is like a check that you fill out and like you have to get it cashed at the bank, Lightning is just pre-signing checks and then just handing a signed check that could be cashed in later. That's really what's going on. So what that means is that you can settle the payment a lot faster. I don't know. Well, sorry. What was your question again?
No,
For
no,
where I was
that's
going.
right. So, I mean, I don't know. The way I kind of understand Lightning, and correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially like Lightning allows you to almost like stack a bunch of transactions onto one big Bitcoin transaction. So effectively, kind of divvying up that big fee, making the fee on the Lightning network significantly smaller, and making that speed very quick. Because, like you said, it's essentially just transacting between two people instead of going on the on chain, going through the full Bitcoin network, and kind of doing it that way. And then, after, a certain amount of time, if you want to bring that back onto chain, you can. But, is that kind of, I guess, along the right lines, or
Yeah.
am I mixed up here?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, the analogy that I really like is the sign check thing. It's like Bitcoin, you have to sign checks, you hand it to somebody else, they have to cash it into the bank, and now they have the money in their account. Also, obviously, these are analogies. You're not literally cashing a check in. But with Lightning, you saw the signed checks, except you just don't cash it in immediately. It's in order to send you a payment, I sign a check, send it to you, and then you just hold on to it until we're done doing business. And anytime that we send a new check to each other within our relationship, you void the old check. So you can always cash in this check and settle the it's called a channel, but you don't have to, and you until you settle, you can send these payments back and forth really, really fast.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like the growing use for Lightning Network is more on like the remittance payments of things, especially with like companies like Strike, Cash App, and some of these others that are kind of implementing the Lightning Network in order to help transact speeds of dollars or whatever fiat currency you're using. So what is your opinion kind of on that use case, and where do you see, I guess, the future of I guess, the Lightning Network, like where it's going to go? Do you think it's going to be, I guess, along the lines of kind of what we're lining out here and what we're seeing, like continued remittance? Or do you think, we're going to maybe move a little bit more towards like utilizing Bitcoin, the asset, and kind of pricing things in sats, so to speak?
I think both.
I know it's a tough question. So I'm coming at you
Yeah,
hard today, Alex. I'm sorry.
it's all good. Yeah, both Bitcoin is a hard asset, but and Lightning is a payment rail. But no, I mean the reason why remittance is exciting, the reason why remittance is really hot in Lightning is because it's like the perfect, simplest, like low hanging fruit way to improve on a payment rail. What people don't get is how insane Western Union's business model is. They basically like move money around and they take 30% sometimes. So like I want to send money to my family in El Salvador, let's say, and I send them $100, they might get 70, which is ridiculous. Okay, they don't actually say that. Like they take like something like 12% in fees, but then they take a lot of money in the spread. So countries that don't have the same currency, like El Salvador uses dollars, so it's not as bad. But for countries that aren't using dollars, they take a massive transaction fee, and then they take money in the spread. That they lie to you about the exchange rate, and they make it more favorable for them. So yeah, the reason why remittance is really hot on Lightning is because it's by far the easiest use case, the most obvious use case for a payment network that can improve upon what we already have. Yeah, like it's okay. It's the most broken use case of payments that was in the world is remittances. Some of the other like use cases for payments, like you can think of like going to a store and like paying. It's already pretty good. The cards work well, despite all the it being built on a weak foundation, or so to speak. But yeah, like the experience of paying with Lightning at a gas station or at a point of sale isn't as game changing as paying Lightning for remittances. Yeah, like the card networks work pretty well. So anyway, I mean it's gonna happen. Like we're making progress, but it's just it's not people don't like latch onto that use cases as quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And there's that other kind of hidden cost in there when it comes to remittances of just like your time to go to the Western Union, right? I mean, like to my understanding, I don't think Western Union has an app or anything like that where you can send it directly over there. You have to like physically go into a store, and in some of these impoverished countries, it brings in the fact of potential violence or something like that. That gangs can hang outside Western Union, so you
Yeah,
need to pay off
that,
somebody
that,
to get a little protected or something like that.
I mean, those stories are like heartbreaking. Like you hear about, family members sending money to their family in El Salvador, and then on the way to or from the Western Union collection site, they get whacked, and they get their remittance money stolen from them because there's physical security involved in money, and when you're holding cash and you can just steal from somebody, it's bad. So yeah, I mean that's another cool innovation about Lightning is that the fact that it's purely digital, so that you never have to go somewhere.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I mean, it's the digital money, right? That's the big aspect of it. And so, on that note, where do you kind of like to see, I guess, Lightning go in the next couple years? What are some like cool, maybe, I guess, like Lightning projects that you're, maybe thinking about or like looking forward to see like come to development or fruition, I guess.
yeah, uh, as far as like progress in the space, I think the biggest black eye on Bitcoin Lightning, or the biggest unaddressed area right now, is Bitcoin for business. It's like a lot of Bitcoiners really care about user facing problems, but very, very few people working on Bitcoin care about business facing problems. And if we want the world to start adopting Bitcoin, then somebody has to cater to the businesses. So like at least, okay. So, yeah, I mean, there's a whole slew of business facing problems. If businesses want to transact in Bitcoin, I mean, they have to think about like accounting and taxes and invoicing, and then reconciling their books with their existing payment system, and it's a bunch of non-trivial problems. But very few people are working on that in the space. So and the exciting part about it is that like if we solve some of these business facing problems, then you might see a big announcement that massive retailers or massive or big companies, you could see hyper Bitcoinization, or you can see the transition into hard money happen a lot quicker. Until those business facing problems are solved, businesses won't be able to do business in Bitcoin, and that's a big part of getting people on. It doesn't matter how many people are saving in Sats if they keep having to cross over to the fiat world every time that they leave their house.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I know you guys at Blockspaces are working on, QuickBooks integration with Lightning payments and other things like that. So I know of a few companies that are kind of working on that. But it seems like the biggest hurdle for me, like when it comes on the business side, is maybe, I guess the fear when it comes to like taxation and just almost like the user interface kind of level, where it's like, okay, this business has multiple people in line, so to speak, and in order to pay, you have to one, pull out your phone, which I mean, you could do tap to pay or something like that, so that's not exactly a big hurdle. But then you got to open an app and then pay with Bitcoin, scan the QR code. So it's like a multi-variable steps too when it comes to the consumer as well. And the businesses, I feel like, just don't really want to, I guess, deal with that kind of hassle when it wouldn't be a huge percentage of their customers.
Yeah.
So outside of like maybe I guess the QuickBooks or the accounting services, do you think that like what's I guess the next step that you think that businesses are really I guess another choke point for the businesses that need some improvement on?
I think you hit on one thing that like I don't think about a lot, but it's still a big problem, which is like how do you get all of the wallets to work the same way? There's several different like pieces of protocol, and there's various adoption with each protocol across the industry. Like it's not nobody people have not agreed on how to do some like features properly. Like one example is like refunds. Like with credit cards, refunds are pretty trivial because the payment doesn't actually settle until after you leave the store. So if you want to do a refund, it's pretty easy just to revert the payment because the money hasn't moved yet. With Lightning, when you make a payment, the payment actually settles. The money leaves your Lightning node and it goes into the stores. So for a refund, you have to effectively make another payment. They have to just pay you back, which I mean, it sounds easy, but making that actually happen isn't so simple. Like one example is that okay, so something in Lightning is all payments today are mostly all payments today are triggered by you scanning like what's called like an invoice. So if I want to pay you, you're going to present me a QR code, and I'm going to scan the QR code, and then my Lightning node is going to pay your Lightning node through that QR code. And that makes sense for a store. I'm going to go to your store and I'm going to buy something off of you. I'm going to scan your QR code at the register and I'm going to pay you. But for a refund, well, now I'm going to, as the consumer, I'm going to have to type in how much I want for my refund and show you, and you're going to scan my QR code. That doesn't make sense. That's a bad experience. So there's talks about how can we make like a push payment? How can we have a QR code that I can scan for you to pay me? And there's several different ways to do it. One way is called LNURL, or LNURL withdrawal. And that's one idea. It's like a protocol spec using something called LNURL. And then there's other people that say, no, we shouldn't use LNURL. We should have something else called offers and invoice requests. And that's a different kind of QR code. Well, the fact that we have disagreements means that not all the wallets work the same way. So as a merchant, it's like, what do? I have to understand this complicated landscape and I have to present you different QR codes. And you as a user have to understand which one your wallet supports. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's like, that's not going to happen. So until the protocol community kind of comes up with an answer, or we consolidate on some consistency on these use cases, it's going to be really hard for merchants to rely upon Lightning.
Yeah, and I think I kind of agree with that too, because I was just having this conversation with some friends today. It's like, that my preferred Lightning wallet that I use is Moon. But for something like Nostr, in order to receive zaps, it's not really good because the LNURL is only available for like 24 hours. So in order to kind of continue using that, I would need to update the LNURL every single time I receive a zap on Nostr, or every single day. In the off chance that I would use or I would receive a zap while, I don't know, typing, or I don't even know what you call it, I guess posting on Nostr. So instead I use
notes.
Yeah, exactly. So instead I use the wallet of Satoshi because that's a little bit more, stable in doing that. But like I said, I'd rather use the user interface of Moon. So there are some like intricacies when it comes to, not only like, I guess, Lightning, or just like, just overall, just like apps, I think, in Bitcoin that need a lot of development. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. And I don't know if it's like necessarily a good thing to have like some sort of standard, but I think that there's like a few things that I guess every single, maybe it's a Lightning wallet, or every single, hot wallet on the phone or something like that, should have some sort of, I guess, like similar way of operating. So, kind of like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, like all these companies, they all have the same credit card, not the same, but, the same kind of thing where, these point of sale terminals don't have to accommodate for, multiple different wallets or multiple different.
I mean, there's consistency, there's consistency. And if there's any differences, they hide it.
Yeah. Exactly. And like every single point of sale terminal now seemingly has, the tap, the insert, the chip, and the swipe. So it gives you the three options, with the user can choose whichever one. Like generally speaking, I think majority of cards now have all three options, but, I guess it just depends on like whatever the user wants to do at the end of the day. So I think that is kind of like, I guess, the next step when it comes to Bitcoin for me, that I see for like kind of consumers to either use that, or use Bitcoin or the Lightning Network to pay in something. Because it seems like now, like with the remittances, it's great for, a lot of, countries and people that need it. I think I just saw Strike just rolled out in Vietnam, I believe, too. So I know they recently rolled out in the Philippines. So, great development that's going on in that space. But, they also announced last year at Bitcoin Miami that, a lot of these point of sale terminals now can implement their API and, have us pay in Bitcoin at, say, Walmart or some of these bigger retail stores. But I think, like you said, there is a lot of hurdles when it comes to a business adopting it, that, whether it's accounting or whatever, and the hurdle of just like ease of use of like that sale terminal. Like if I could just go in and, I don't know, tap my phone, or I know Coin Corner has a card where you can load some sats on it and you could do like the tap to pay on certain point of sales terminals. Like I think if that was implemented a little bit more, maybe like stateside, we'd get more Bitcoiners, I guess, paying. as long as they're the kind of Bitcoiner that's, I guess, more or less privy to that odd idea, because I think a
Sure.
lot are still, I guess, holding on for dear life onto their sats. But I don't know, like,
Yeah.
what's your overall opinion on all that?
Um, yeah, this discussion is good and it's exciting for a couple of reasons. Like, okay, personally, I don't think it's actually like a realistic. I don't think it's realistic for Bitcoiners to convince the world to start using Lightning. Like, if we market it that way, like Lightning isn't that important to most people. But what would be awesome is, okay, the right way to do it in my mind is we just sell people that we have an alternative payment rail that's just better, faster, cheaper than anything that you have, and then we just hide it all. Like, imagine, okay, so like one big problem with like the point of sale space is like, how do you accept payments from Venmo, Cash App, and Zelle and all of these other apps? Like, they're all proprietary and they all have their own rails. Like, you can accept from Cash App, but if you like if you're going around and you see like a street performer, you'll often see that they have like 6 different QR codes printed out, for all the different tip jars so that they can market to whatever apps people are using. That's a problem for user experience at a point of sale. You don't want to have to present the user 6 QR codes and they have to like focus on the one that they have. So what if we say that, okay, we have an alternative where we go up to Venmo and say, hey, if you integrate this payment rail into your app, now you are linked into the universal payment rail. It's like if Cash App's doing the same thing, and Strike, and if we go to each of these, if they all implement Lightning, then now there's one universal QR code that will work for all these apps. And frankly, like, that's a really compelling case for like point of sale manufacturers, because they've been trying to crack this code for a while. Like, how do you get all these neobanks? How do you get all these wallet apps that people are using on a day-to-day basis? And how do you accept payment from all of them at once? And, well, if you, as a point of sale, accept payments over Lightning, and now you can tell all of these companies, say, hey, if you guys adopt the standard, it's not our standard, just a global payment standard. Now we can accept payments from your apps too. So, like, I think that's like a real way that we can actually do adoption and retailers.
Yeah, I think you're right there too. But I think a big hurdle that I've heard from a couple, I can't remember the last place I heard it, or maybe it was on the Canadian Bitcoiners. I was listening to, they had a recent episode with Francis Pouillon of Bull Bitcoin, but he said essentially that, the Lightning Network transactions maybe take, I guess, like 10% of their transactions per se, but of the problems that they have, it's like 85% of the reason that they have to
Lightning.
speak with customer service is through Lightning. So, I guess, like,
Yeah.
when it comes to like the ease of use or maybe some of the difficulties with Lightning, like, what are some improvements, like, just overall that can make it easier, I guess, for some of the businesses to implement Lightning in order to, kind of like backdoor Bitcoin in its way in.
Yeah. So the reason why there's so many problems with Lightning, there is for like a specific technical reason, and that is that both the sender and receiver have to have access to liquidity on Lightning in order for payment to go through. And every time that you like pay somebody, you're finding a path between my node and your node, and you have to find liquidity on every route or on every hop in the route. So if there's one hop that they give bad information about, or that doesn't have enough liquidity, or the sender doesn't have liquidity on their side, or the receiver doesn't have it on their side, then the payment doesn't go through. So everybody has to be doing their job very, very well. I mean, you can think of like the internet, it's like, is it, in the early days of the internet, if you go to Google and then the page doesn't load, people are going to be calling Google and say, why isn't your page loading? You say, you don't have internet. It's like, in the same way that Google has to have access to the internet to be broadcasting their service. So the best thing that businesses can do is just make sure that their services have access to liquidity. And then if both parties, if both the sender and receiver have access to liquidity, then the payment should go through. However, not every wallet app is managing liquidity as well as every other. So that's where a lot of like I'm assuming, I don't know Bull's Bitcoin's problems specifically. I'm assuming like a lot of the problems with payments failing on Lightning is because of pathfinding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not exactly asking you to dive into that full issue or anything like that, but on the liquidity end, It almost seems like from like a business perspective too, if you have like some sort of lightning node, do you think like at a certain point in time, then it's like, okay, once you have X amount or something like that, and maybe somebody wants to withdraw that and put it, maybe in cold storage, or, take it off their lightning node that's on their point of sale terminal into something else to go buy other goods or services or something like that. It is it going to be, I guess, to a certain point where it's like, hey, on these point of sale terminals, we know like you go through, I don't know, X amount of transactions throughout, I don't know, a day, say, where it's gonna require some more people with like, I guess, Bitcoin accounting backgrounds that understand the Lightning Network. Whereas, if you're at this grocery store or this restaurant that's getting paid in Lightning, or with Bitcoin on Lightning, that you understand that you're going to need X amount of liquidity throughout the day in order to like
No,
send and receive transactions.
it's got to be hidden in my mind. It's like the people. Okay, like not every business has to think about setting up their credit card payment rails. They hire somebody to do it for them, or they pay Visa, or they pay another card, like they pay with Square or something to handle it for them. Companies and businesses are not going to worry about liquidity or even accounting the future. Like this, the onus is on the Bitcoin companies to make this stuff easy to use and to integrate it into the existing business systems. Like yeah, no, I mean it's a fantasy. That's a thing that like annoys me about Bitcoin. It's just that, like they just think that everybody is going to like be super savvy and learn like public cryptography, and they assume that everybody's going to be running their own node. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's like we're going to have to find a way to make it so easy to use this technology that it incorporates into people's everyday lives without them having to change how they think. It's like we have to have a way of creating the same experiences that people are used to with this new technology. And then for the things we can't do, like the things we can't completely emulate, like cold storage, we got to find an easy way for people to do that properly. But for stuff like everyday payments, it's like it's not an option for liquidity to be a constant issue. It's like people have to be able to have payments without thinking about it.
Then would it be maybe yeah, no, I agree with you there too, because I'm just thinking about like the small business owners which is what I think, I guess, like using Lightning and Bitcoin benefits the most right now, because, with inflation and other things like that, that 3% fee that Visa, MasterCard, and, 7% that American Express takes is, definitely going to hurt somebody's business when they're not having as many transactions as, say, like a Walmart or a McDonald's or whatever, where they can minimize that spread at, I don't know, your local Chinese food place or your local, I don't know, hamburger shop or whatever it is. Like that's going to be more valuable to them. And on that note, they probably don't, if that spread is something that matters to them, they're not going to want to hire somebody, to do some accounting for them, just like you're saying, just because like they're going on Bitcoin. So it's kind of like, well, I'm getting rid of this 3% spread, making it, I don't know, 1% or whatever it is, less than 1%, depending on, whether you're using like something like Oshi or something like that. And then, now I have to hire somebody that's taking up that other 2%. It just doesn't really seem to make any sense. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you there, where, yeah, we basically need to have it so it's just like seamless. But it seems like we're kind of, we're moving along, right? But it seems like we're still a decent ways away. Well, you're, as somebody who's like kind of working in the weeds of this kind of aspect, like helping integrate with business, like where do you think we are kind of in this cycle?
I think it's incredibly nebulous still. I mean, it's super early. There's like under 5 companies really working on business facing problems in Bitcoin, which is absurd to me. Like it blows my mind. I mean, there's like Zapright, there's like us, there's, I mean, like Strike to some degree, but they have holes in their stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, there's not that many players in the space, so we're starting to uncover. It blows my mind. Like, I mean, we've had Lightning for now a few years, and this is coming. I'm surprised that somebody that more people aren't working on this stuff, because it seems like that's where the gold mine is. If this is going to be, if what we believe is true, which is that Lightning and Bitcoin is going to become the payments and money of the future, then it seems like a pretty good bet as far as the business goes. So, yeah, no, it's early, and it's early.
Yeah, for sure. But it seems like there's, I guess, more of a push for developers. Maybe it's just because I was just in Austin for SatsBuy and the hackathon and other things like that. But it seems like more of these things are kind of popping up. While I was in Austin, I attended the Lit Devs, which I never even knew was really a thing. I guess it was like the eighth one in Austin. And I'm sure
Yes,
that
yeah.
if there's not one here, or if there's not one in Atlanta, I'm sure that as big as the developer scene is there, that it will kind of, matriculate or start there as well. And from my understanding, the Lit Devs came from San Francisco area to Austin, and that's kind of how it got started. So yeah, like, I mean, what is like, because there's already like a lot of bit devs meetups and kind of things like that, like what is the main difference between the bit devs and the lit devs, other than like working on Lightning and Bitcoin? Like, what are the, like, dumb it down for me. Talk to me like I'm a fifth grader. Like, what are the main intricacies that are different between like being able to be a developer on like Bitcoin Core opposed to Lightning?
I mean, they're pretty similar. It's at least okay. The meetups are pretty similar. Yeah, first addressing the meetups. Lit devs and bit devs feel the same unless you really know what's going on. Like if you're unless you're a very technical person, like both meetups are not for you. I mean, everybody should go. Everybody should try it out. But I mean, they're similar to TabConf. Lit devs and bit devs typically do not cater to the lowest common denominator. The conversations are technical, which unfortunately scare people away. So yeah, the Bitcoin or the bit devs meetups typically focus on. Actually, that's not even true. So, like most cities only have one technical meetup, and it's called Bit Devs. And then they talk about Bitcoin and Lightning and anything else that's relevant to like the developer scene that cares at the meetup. Like they talk about nostr too a lot. There's no not devs, nost devs meetups, but people still talk about what they're doing. But in places like I didn't know that there was lit devs in the Bay or in on the West Coast, but in places like the Bay and Austin, they have such a surplus of developer talent that there's a market to have more than just one or two or three technical Bitcoin meetups a month, and that's why they pop up. Yeah, I mean they're fun. I mean, I'm sure that like honestly like I don't go to book clubs because I don't like read that many books, and it's always impressive to me that people that aren't like developers and aren't like immersed in code get value out of bit devs and lit devs. Like obviously everybody's welcome to come. It's just always like I'm a little bit nervous. Like if I see like new faces about how they're going to take the information, I just don't want to scare them off. So
Well, yeah, I mean, as somebody, I know how to code, but I wouldn't say like I'm a developer or anything like by any means like close to that. But I think for me, when I was attending, I attended Bit Devs and Lit Devs while I was in Austin. I think it's just kind of cool to hear people break it down. Once you guys kind of get into like the intricacies of like what's really going on, the code and other things like that, that's kind of over my head, or maybe I zone out a little bit. But like I think like just hearing what you guys are working on, or just like kind of understanding the thought process when it comes to coding. I mean, like I have experience doing it, so maybe I'm not the best example, but just kind of like diving in and like understanding, what you're trying to build, and see if there's any avenue that I could like maybe add some input, or I can like ask some dumb questions, just to kind of figure out what's going on. I think like overall, it's just like an interesting side of Bitcoin that I think there's like really kind of three silos that people kind of find their way into. It's either like the philosophical side of things, which isn't really technical, but it outlines like all the things that the fiat currency and everything like that kind of breaks down. Then there's the developer side of things, where you're getting real deep into the code. You're trying to solve some of these problems that maybe Bitcoin or Lightning has, or build some application that you think can improve, or like just help the user experience, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the last silo, which is like the mining industry, where so like understanding like energy and kind of utilizing all that. So I think no matter which silo you're kind of like find yourself in when it comes to Bitcoin, I think like understanding at least at like a surface level, all three of them is pretty valuable. And because like, developers who have some sort of, philosophical thought about something can figure out how to build that. Whether it's mining, like maybe there's some way, shape, or form that you can, I don't know, come up with some sort of app or something like that to help understand, some of these pools or something like that. Like I'm sure Brains has a bunch of developers that helped with all that with their things and stuff like that too. So I think like for those who might be intimidated with bit devs, because I had that honestly, when Tampa first kind of brought the bit devs down, Benny Builder, your coworker, who and fellow champion of Sats by Hackathon. I think I was a little intimidated to go to that. I mean, granted, I usually record on Thursdays, so there was a little, I guess, built-in excuse for me. But I think like going to that now, it kind of like helps me see some of the issues with some of the products that we're using, and like maybe throw out some ideas as to is this a big hurdle that I'm just like, I don't know, it's unrealistic, or is this something that it is something that can be implemented. It's just somebody hasn't really thought about it yet or spent the time to really implement it. So I don't know. I just kind of word vomited. So let's hear what you have to think about all that.
Yeah. There's definitely value in understanding that things exist, like new features, even if you get lost in the technical weeds of like how it works and what's going on, but just understanding what people are working on, so that the more people and product-minded people can start mulling over how this is going to look and feel in the real world. There's not enough people doing that. There's not enough people working on that part of innovation. I think because we get a lot of like protocol innovation and then features or like technical features don't get used for years until somebody, the product mind, stumbles across it accidentally. But yeah, no, it's not okay. Another thing is like not every meetup is technical. Like there's other Bitcoin meetups around the country. Like Atlanta has Atlanta Bit Plebs, in addition to Atlanta Bit Devs, and Atlanta Bit Plebs is the non-technical meetup. I mean, it still gets deep and people still talk about important topics. It's just not focused on protocol and not focused on code. It's focused on maybe the philosophical side of Bitcoin, as well as like workshops and like how to do things from like a user's perspective. But they've been very successful. And there's other meetups around the country. Like Austin has one, like the Austin Bitcoin meetup, which I think is the first meetup in Austin. That's a quote unquote non-technical meetup. And then there's another one in Nashville that's like the Nashville Bitcoin meetup or Nashville Bitcoiners or something like that. That's also not a technical meetup necessarily. So yeah, there's a lot of places for people to think and get involved in Bitcoin, without being a developer.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like even non-technical people kind of have something to add to the developer, I guess, process, because I guess like the ease of use aspect, right? I mean, maybe sometimes that's overlooked when you're in the weeds of things, because you just get an idea and kind of get set on it and you get building and all that kind of stuff. But when somebody who's the actual end user, your target audience, so to speak, is using it to like, well, I don't really care about that, or like channels, for example. So like we're in Tampa Bay Bit Devs. I kind of highlighted it when in the podcast interview with Benny Builder, Benny Hoddle, or Benny Blader, whatever you want to call him. We're building like a Bay wallet, so to speak, like a Lightning wallet for Tampa Bay. And so one of the topics that's come up a lot recently is like the channel aspects of the Lightning wallet. Like, should that end user even have access to open and closed channels, or like you look at the channels or anything like that?
Yeah.
And the majority of people who are not like the developer aspects of that, like say, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to understand or have to mess around with any of that. But maybe a more technical person would want to see some of that. So it's like, well,
it's like, okay, I have a very strong opinion on this matter. Users do not care about channels. It does not improve the user experience whatsoever to even expose any idea of liquidity or channels to them. Like, well, having the same conversation or a similar conversation inside Blockspaces, and it's like there is never going to be a future where every user or the average user or even the sophisticated user cares about channel management. It's like we got to find a way to hide it. We got to find a way to. I mean, and people have found ways. Like just-in-time channels are pretty cool, where channels open automatically when a payment comes in instantly, so you don't have to ever worry about channel management. But as far as users are concerned, users will not. They will never care about channel management. They want to use the feature without caring about how it works. So we gotta. I mean, as a community, we gotta separate those two things and have and stop mixing the peas with the carrots. It's
Yeah, keep the food separate, right? I mean, eat it one at a time. But
yeah.
outside of Bitcoin, right? There's a lot of things going on, just like macroeconomic wise. So we'll touch on this a little bit at the end here, about like this whole banking system, right? So we're having kind of like SVB and supposedly like 183 other banks in the United States are potentially having some issues with allowing customers to get their funds. There's a bank run. They're losing a lot of money when it comes to, their bond portfolios and other things like that. There's a bunch of deep intricacies that we could go down that rabbit hole. I don't want to do any of that. My question is like, do you think that this is kind of going to hurt maybe, on the outskirts of a lot of, maybe Bitcoin and like crypto related companies because, when it comes to, I guess like overall business, right? I mean, SVB was pretty well known as being a lender when it came to a lot of these, I guess these crypto companies. I know that they lended to FTX and some of these other maybe shitcoin casinos and other things like that. So, outside of I guess the development side of things, where maybe it's a little bit more difficult to or take some time to develop and make the user experience a little bit better. It seems like there is a little bit of FUD maybe when it comes around to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin has been ripping, during all this crisis. So I guess what's your overall opinion on this kind of this banking matter, and where do you think like Bitcoin goes from here?
Yeah. Well, I first should say that this is somewhat outside of my area of expertise, macroeconomics.
Yeah, exactly. I know, but I get that. So I mean, knowing that though, you like I said, you are on the development side and you do deal with businesses and other things like that. Obviously, you're a Lightning developer. You're not the sales guy kind of coming in with the pitches and other things like that. So, but just knowing all that, like what's kind of like your overall opinion on this? And does it make you, I guess, more bullish on Bitcoin in the short term? And yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a bunch of externalities with the banking system seeming to collapse. Like the first and most obvious thing is this: the startup landscape is tougher. If a lot of companies are wrapped, like a lot of startups have money inside of this bank that goes down, that's not good for those startups. Another externality is that the thing that blew up is the competitor to Bitcoin. It's like the traditional banking system is the enemy, the monster that Bitcoin is trying to slay. So, with that being said, I've heard from the grapevine that a lot of Bitcoin onboarding companies and like my first Bitcoin companies, they're getting a lot of organic inbound traffic from people that are afraid of the banking system now, and that is very good for Bitcoin. That is exactly in the direct. I mean, not the fear isn't good necessarily, but the realization that people need to find an alternative to this broken system. That's very good for Bitcoin. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this situation. Again, it's complicated. I mean, I don't know. I mean, okay, so like Balaji's thing. Did you see Balaji's tweet?
Yeah. So for those who didn't see it, why don't we bring that up, right? So Balaji said, I don't want to get the exact quote wrong, but it was something along the lines of
It's like I'll bet you. Yeah, it's well,
I'll look
okay.
it
I mean,
up.
yeah, I mean, he basically bet this. Was it a journalist or he bet somebody that Bitcoin was going to hit $1 million a coin in the next 90 days, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's bananas by any stretch of the imagination. It's bananas. $1 million a coin, like really?
Yeah.
It's like you really
Yeah. He
expect
said
it to go
that.
from
Yeah, that
Right.
Bitcoin would go to $1 million a coin. I'm still trying to find the tweet. But he said basically that Bitcoin would go to $1 million a coin, and the U.S. Would reach like hyperinflation in the next 90 days. Now, I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you kind of like, I guess, take a step back and look at the current situation here, we do have like a kind of a banking crisis, right? I mean, so outside of SVB, there's like 183 other banks that have this issue potentially and could fail. And so, what is a cog that the Fed has pulled previously in order to combat some issues? They just dumped a bunch of liquidity. Now, yesterday, was a FOMC meeting, and instead of Jerome Powell kind of backing down and I guess like not raising rates, he's still raised by 25 basis points, which is kind of privy to the course of what he's been doing. But he's kind of changed his tune a little bit. Maybe he'll reverse, maybe he won't. But essentially, like, there is a chance he could dump another $2 trillion worth of liquidity into the system. So, maybe it won't reach $1 million a coin in the next 90 days. But I do think that there's like an aspect to what Balaji's saying where, there's like whenever there's going to be trouble that's ensuing, the lever that the Fed keeps pulling is just dumping more liquidity in the market. So it'll be interesting to see if that basically like it's quantitative tightening when they keep raising interest rates and quantitative easing when they dump liquidity in the market. Essentially, they'll be doing the two of the same thing, or the two opposites at the same time. They'll still be raising rates while dumping liquidity into the market. And how Bitcoin reacts to that, I don't really know. So it'll be kind of, I guess, interesting to see. But yeah, like the only thing that has me worried about it, like, or the two things that has me worried about it is like one, the on ramps, like to get Bitcoin. People still need to use banks in order to, buy and sell Bitcoin at this point. And if banks basically like this is where I think like the biggest issue could be is like if a bank's failing and you're dumping your money from, I don't know, I'm just using like a general normie example, but from your bank account to like a Coinbase or something like that, or to a Strike or something along those lines where, you're using this to buy Bitcoin. They could essentially just cut it off there and say like, hey, we're not going to allow you to find some sort of alternative. Like you're going to have to keep either your money in your bank account or, change it to a savings account where you can't like move your money quite as frequently. There's some other rails that they could cut off and make it more difficult for Bitcoin adoption. And then two,
I think
like,
I mean, if they actually do that, if they actually stop you from moving money around in your account, like that's going to be the best thing for Bitcoin possible. Because like,
I mean, I think in the long term for sure, but I think in the short term it's going to hurt, right? Because then you're going to have to figure out how to get Bitcoin, and like, my mom or dad or my grandparents is not going to be able to figure that out. I don't think.
I think people will find a way. If they actually say that, no, you're not allowed to move your Bitcoin out of your account, I mean, everybody's going to find a way. There's going to be news articles and people publishing content about how to do it properly, even with the new sanctions or whatever, because everybody's going to be so desperate to get their money out of banks. Even like crypto ATMs or something. People.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I do have an episode where I interviewed Hediwook, who has like a full guide on how to get non-KYC Bitcoin. So for those interested, that's a pretty interesting episode. And I've actually been sending that one around a lot lately because I've had a couple people ask me like, oh, how are you getting a non-KYC Bitcoin or like using CoinJoin or things like that? So I usually point them either to that episode or any of like BTC sessions, kind of I guess coin joining videos or something along those lines. Like he has some great tools that you can use to find that. Yeah,
RoboSats is pretty OP.
Which one did you say? Brimbosats? Is that what you said?
RoboSats, ROBOSats. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
It's decentralized. Like uses actually no, I don't know if it's actually decentralized, but it uses like it incorporates with Lightning directly and like 100 different payment options. So you can like buy Bitcoin by like mailing Amazon gift cards in the mail, and they'll send you back Bitcoin like over Lightning. It's pretty cool.
Wow, that is pretty awesome. Well, Alex, I do appreciate your time and kind of breaking down the Lightning Network and all the things that are kind of going around on it, and maybe some of the hurdles too. So for those that are interested, why don't you tell them where they can find you and what you got going on?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on Twitter at _Alex Lewin. Yeah, it begins with an underscore. That's kind of annoying, but yeah, at _Alex Lewin on Twitter. Yeah, and I'll be at Bitcoin Plus Plus. So I'll see if anybody wants to hang out in Austin like a month. I'll be there.
Yeah, and you got your nostr public key in your Twitter bio as well for those who are on nostr and want to check that out. So be sure to give Alex a follow and bug him at some of these meetups and pick or meetups or conferences and pick his brain. My man's a hackathon champion. So Alex, I appreciate you coming in, and dude, yeah, man, we'll have to have you back on maybe when some big development thing comes on. We'll have to have you and Benny on at the same time, I guess.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
The dev team.
that'd be a party.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Later.